I mean, especially when we also had a discussion even about doing the podcast, I can gather that you have a lot of knowledge even about filming or cameras. So, how did your interest build in that?
I've always been interested in filmmaking, so I've got a certificate in 3D animation as well.
Right.
So filmmaking has been like core kind of interest for me as a hobby.
Right.
So usually what I do is I just go out, do some random filming, have some fun with friends. In fact, I'd actually during COVID, I'd actually started writing a little web series in Marathi
Oh,
and
wow.
trying to shoot it in the Netherlands so that people in Netherlands can enjoy that web series with a couple of friends here. So
Right.
that is something else that I love doing.
Oh, multi-talented. That is so much fun.
Thank
So, in fact, listening to you, I can. I also know that no matter where you are, whether in Netherlands, whether in US, whether wherever you're traveling, you you do carry the Indian culture with you. You try to, I think, inculcate the Indian culture wherever you are. And what we've also got to know is that you do end up making a lot of friends, trying to build a community. You do have groups with Indians, especially no matter where you go. So how did you start doing that?
Well, I like to make a lot of friends. I'm a very friendly person with a lot of people. And usually, what happens is that I'm proud of the Indian culture that we come from. So, even my daughter, who is born here in the Netherlands, we speak to her in Marathi. She has to learn Marathi. That is pretty important for her. So she speaks Marathi, English, and Dutch. So three languages right now. And she should be able to communicate with anybody in Indian languages. Now, of course, she has to learn Hindi, which will take some time, but at least she communicates in Marathi. The other thing is you can share that bond with people from where you come from. You cannot share exactly the same bond with somebody else who has been from a different country altogether.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
So that is something that brings you much more closer and together as a community because you share
Right.
some jokes. Like yesterday, I shared a joke with Vinod Nehte, which cannot be explained to anybody else on API
Right.
programming. And I cannot explain it to anybody else because it is in Hindi, right? So
Right. Makes sense.
that is how it is. So I cannot share it with somebody here in the Netherlands because he wouldn't understand it.
Right.
So
Right.
that is how it is. So you come together, you live as a community, you help each other in terms of crisis or whenever they need be. So if somebody needs to fit a light bulb, for example, we call each other and we say, "Hey, I need help," and somebody turns up to help you. That is how we build this community.
That is amazing. I mean, to have that kind of community, to build that kind of community, especially when you're living outside of your country, to have that culture over there and to have that feeling of belonging without being in your own country. I think that's commendable that you have built that for yourself and that you do it continuously. I mean, we also know of a certain Infogen employee who is not Indian, but also very Indian, thanks to you. I will not name him, but I think that's amazing to bring our culture everywhere and to take it ahead so proudly. That's brilliant.
Thank you.
So great to see that. So we also know that you do a little mimicry.
Where did you
I
hear
have
this from?
I have my sources. So the sources have told me that you do a little mimicry. And before I request you to mimic someone, I actually want to know, do you think there are like certain skills that are required for mimicry specifically?
Well, what happens is the mimicry I do is usually when I look at a person, I just look at the characteristics, the way they speak, the way they communicate, and stuff like that. So
Right.
at times, you start behaving like that person because you just get inspired from him for some reason because of his characteristics. It is
Right.
not like it's not derogatory at all, but
Of course not.
it's more like, you get inspired. You just think, hey, this the way this guy is doing something is so good. Like actors, for example, they
Correct.
look at some person. Like in the
Right.
olden days, they would, if you look at, for example, let me take an example of Mehmood as a comedian. He must have taken some kind of inspiration for his role from Hyderabad or something like that, and then
Right.
build on top of it. So you get some inspiration from certain people, and then you start, mimicking them. But it's spontaneous. If you ask me to do it now, maybe it will not come out, but it's so spontaneous.
But that is great to know. And it also, honestly speaking, I think mimicry inculcates, or you already have those skills, and it enhances so many skills. Like, for example, just like you said, you are basically just observing people,
Yeah.
how they act, how they talk, how they behave. And I mean, how do you think observation as a skill is? I think it's really required in all facets of life. But how do you think it would help someone in the IT industry, for example?
In the IT industry, observation is very important. Firstly, if you're dealing with a customer,
Right,
you need to observe couple of things. One is, what are the customer requirements? You have to be very stringent on that, because you might actually, the customer may ask you to build something and you might build something completely different, frustrating him. You need to observe the customer's interactions with you, because
right,
from that you can decide whether that customer is happy, whether the customer has got some issues, whether he's reluctant or hesitant to tell you that, there are some problems, and you need to become friends with the customer to get more information out of him and make him comfortable. And that
right,
will actually help you a lot. Observations, another part of observations is you should appreciate the way your colleagues work in at
right,
Infogen, right? Somebody has got a strength in coding, for example, and he does a fantastic job on coding and he creates all these beautiful things. But then there is somebody else who is very good at management.
right,
Somebody else is very good at HR. So when you observe all of these, you realize that you have shortcomings, and how
correct,
can you work on your shortcomings is something you can work upon when you look at it. And then there are some other observations on the funny side, what you should not do, right?
of course,
Yeah, because you look at it and now yeah, this is something I should not do, because I'm going to then be in trouble if I do this. So
right,
it's both sides, actually.
right. Actually, it is very you're right. It is important to also observe others and say, if this happens with me, maybe I should not do this or I should not do that. I think that's actually really true. You can always learn from your own faults, but even from others' faults, if you can make that into a learning, that's great. So absolutely, I completely agree with you. You have been such a sport,
Thank
Alhad,
you.
for this podcast. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being here, for being our guest, and sharing so much about yourself.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of it was a bit difficult, and I'm sorry to go to those areas, but
Yeah.
it has been very, very educative. And I
Mm.
think you're a great person. It was really
Thank
great getting to know you through this podcast as well.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. It was
Thank you
very
so
nice
much,
talking to
Alhad.
you.
Yes, you too, and have a
Thank
really
you.
good day ahead.
Thank you. You too. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.